The Nahual that attacked my ranch. My story takes place in the 90s. At that time I remember the sun setting behind the mountains and the night falling over the small town of San Juan. There was some land I inherited from my father, as well as some cattle that I began to care for. My name is Juan Arriaga, and at that time I was already a man hardened by field work. No sooner was the sun up I was getting ready to milk my cows. This was my daily routine, calm and familiar, or so I thought. It was almost always around 3 a.m. when I was up and ready to start my day, and as usual it was time to milk my cows, a task I performed for many years. It was something my father had taught me. The sound of those moos was so familiar that it was the beginning of my little dairy business. The smell of wet hay and cow dung was in the air, an aroma that took me back to my childhood and memories of my father. He was the one who had taught me the dairyman's trade. When I finished milking the cows, I would load the milk jugs onto my wooden cart pulled by my horse, which was called Cinnamon. With a crack from my whip, we would set out and deliver and sell the product, be it on the road or a determined shop. I traveled along the dusty roads that led to the mountains. Along the way I greeted my neighbors, I smiled and said a few words, handing out milk, filling my neighbors' pots and bottles. It was a simple but satisfying routine. The routine would often include the laughter of children and the smell of freshly baked bread from the shops I delivered to. It was a simple life but full of peace and joy. Everything changed on one of those days. I remember that it had been a particularly busy day that had left me quite tired. I decided to give myself a break in the local canteen known as the White Horse. It was frequented by the men of the town to cool off, relax and even share stories after a hard day's work. I would usually play domino with my friends. When I entered the canteen, the place was filled with cigar smoke and the sound of the conversations of people. I sat down at the bar and ordered a cold beer. I took a big chug of beer when suddenly a large and burly man entered the canteen, catching the attention of everyone there. He had a straw hat and a dirty shirt. His face was sunburned and hardened by work. He approached the bar and asked for a bottle of brandy with a raspy voice. While the bartender was pouring his drink, my eyes landed on the man's face. Something about the man's face gave me a surge of resentment and rage. I recognized him immediately. He was the son of Mr. Pedro, a man who had done me a lot of harm in the past. He had problems with my father who had already passed away, and he took that bitterness to his grave. Mr. Pedro was a landowner who had exploited the townspeople of the region for years. My father was an honest and hard-working man. He rebelled against their injustices of Mr. Pedro and his gang of thugs. This came at the cost of his health and well-being. Since they couldn't fire him, they fabricated a lie and accused my father of being a thief. They jailed my poor old man, and after he was released his health took a nosedive until he eventually passed away. With time even that bastard Mr. Pedro also died, but no one knew where that man was buried. His son inherited his wealth. His son, however, was irresponsible and hung around thieves and crooks. He eventually lost his wealth, lands, and he went to live in the mountains where he would hide himself. It was said he would speak to the devil so that he could help him commit crimes and wrongdoings, but these were just rumors. I wouldn't doubt these rumors to actually be true. Out of sheer rage I got up and approached him. "You're that bastard Mr. Pedro's son?" My voice shaking with anger. "You're that bastard's son. I'm glad your father is dead, and you should join him for all the harm you did to my family." The man looked at me with surprise on his face and then with a mocking tone. "It seems that the milk has turned you sour," he said sarcastically. "Don't you remember what happened to your brother? When he also went against my father?" My fists clenched tightly. My brother, who had also went against Mr. Pedro, had mysteriously disappeared. People were commenting that he had been found dead on a hill path, and they claimed that a mysterious beast had torn him to pieces. I always suspected that the man had something to do with his death. Without thinking twice, I threw myself at the man and began to beat him. The crowd was filled with screams as we were fighting. The man was strong and sturdy, but I was blinded by rage and vengeance. At one point in the fight, the man grabbed me by the head and slammed me against the bar. I felt a sharp pain in my ear and then blood began to flow out, but in an act of imprudence I took out my knife and cut off his ear. The man stumbled back and shouted in pain, swearing revenge, and that I should prepare myself for the worst. He ran out of the canteen, disappearing amongst the crowd. I stood there stunned. People looked at me in shock. Some came to help me. They took me to the doctor where they treated my wounds I had received. After this I continued with my life and work, but the pain of losing loved ones was still there. I thought that at any moment that guy was going to want to surprise me on some mountain road, but I was prepared, and I can even say that I was looking forward to it. I wanted to end with so many years of resentment. The thought of revenge never left my mind for a second. On one of those nights, as I was returning from work, a guttural howl raised the hairs on the back of my neck. It was a terrifying sound, like a hungry wolf that was about to attack or something worse. I didn't really know what type of animal it was. I looked around in an attempt to find the source of the sound. I took out my gun and took aim. I saw a glimpse of something moving in the darkness that surrounded me, but my eyesight couldn't pierce the darkness of the trees. The moon that was covered by clouds opened up for a short moment. That's when I saw it. I saw an enormous silhouette that moved stealthily. It was a large creature with eyes that shone like burning coals. It was an abomination, a hybrid of man and dog, two worlds that should have never crossed. Its fur was a mix of gray and white tones, its eyes barely visible between strands of messy hair, giving off an empty look full of torment that could not be explained by words. Its limbs were grotesque, with long fingers and twisted bones with an unnatural shape. Its movement was strange. It emitted unnerving growls. I was petrified with fear, a type of fear that I had never felt before. The hairs on its back were permanently standing up, as if they were trying to leave its disgusting body. Its mere existence was a reminder of nature's limits, and its presence was both a curse to those who dared to look upon it. I began to run with all my might to try and escape that creature. My mind was racing, but I dare not imagine what that thing's claws would do to me. I ran as fast as I could to get to a safe place to calm myself and come up with a strategy to fight that thing. My lungs burned from fatigue, adrenaline was running through my body. Terror was consuming me. And then I remembered what my grandfather once told me. Those legends of people who lived in the mountains called them Nahuals. Nahuals were a kind of animals with the intelligence of a human. These creatures would terrorize the people of local towns and often kill them. That was what was chasing me. It was impossible. That beast with black fur and burning eyes was roaring with fury, its claws scratching at the tree branches. The legends Grandpa told me about were true. I entered a small crevice amongst some rocks so I could catch my breath. I took out my revolver from my bag and began to fire blindly in the direction I thought the creature was in. But the creature was too fast. Moments later I heard a painful howl. One of my bullets had managed to graze its hide, but it wasn't enough to stop it. I noticed that the beast was a few meters away from me, so I tried to run again, but I tripped on the root of a tree that sent me to the ground. The Nahual pounced on me and was about to plunge its claws into my chest. In a desperate attempt I fired my revolver in its direction. The creature howled in pain as my final bullet made direct contact against its flesh. It retreated with a guttural howl. I got up and tried to run away once again. The Nahual was just as quick to give chase yet again, as I could feel its warm breath on the back of my neck. I felt a sharp pain on my back as one of that creature's claws had managed to cut my back. Blood began to flow out of the wound, drastically reducing my strength. It was clear this thing was intent on killing me. The pain was indescribable, but I couldn't stop because if I did it would be my end. I defended myself with all I had. I ran and ran until I made it to the river. Without thinking it twice I jumped into the cold water and swam to the other side. The Nahual roared with frustration as I had managed to escape. It remained looking at me with his flaming eyes, then with a last howl it disappeared into the darkness of the mountain woods. The way back home felt eternal. I don't know how I got there without being attacked again by the creature. My steps were heavy and my body ached. My mind was tormented by terror. When I got to the ranch, the first thing I heard was the desperate mooing of my cows. The sound chilled my blood because I knew the creature had followed me and had reached my house and was endangering my animals. I gathered courage and got my grandfather's shotgun. The only weapon I had left. I prayed to God hoping it would still work. Adrenaline courses through my veins yet again, and this time it was not because of fear, but determination. I was ready to fight the creature that lurked in the darkness. The night was illuminated by the moonlight, my senses sharpened to the sounds of movement. I moved with caution. That's when I saw it, the silhouette of the beast in the moonlight. It was large and menacing. It was hunting my cattle, slaughtering them without mercy. A wild roar pierced the night as the creature pounced on one of my dairy cows. Without thinking twice I shot at the beast. The sound pierced the silent night as the beast turned its burning gaze towards me. Despite my injuries I began to run once again as the beast chased after me yet again. In a moment of desperation I climbed onto a wooden platform that I used to store hay for my cattle. I watched in horror as the beast charged in. My cattle, being scared, tried desperately to escape. It was at this moment when the realization hit me. I needed to stop this thing here and now and protect my cows. I took a deep breath, took aim, and fired. The beast howled in pain as I had managed to shoot the beast in the back of the head shortly after the creature collapsed to the ground. I left my hiding spot and approached the thing with caution. A couple more whimpers left that thing's snout before shutting its now dull eyes. I had done it. I had killed the Nahual. A feeling of relief washed over me as the nightmare had ended, but also sadness as well because I had lost some of my cows and the images of that thing killing my cows would haunt me forever. I dragged the creature and placed it under a tarp. I planned to show it to people as proof of what happened to me. I went to bed and in the morning I went to go check on the body of the beast, but it was gone. I felt as if my blood had gone cold, so I began to look for it. I thought that the beast had managed to survive. After a while of searching I gave up. I counted all the damages that had been done and after salvaging what I could from the corpses of my cows I went on with the routine as usual. While on the road making deliveries I couldn't help but think back to what I had just lived. Was it real or was it all a dream? My blood went cold when I saw him. Mr. Pedro's son. His head and face were bandaged. That's when he said, "You managed to kill my father, you bastard, but next time you won't be so lucky. When I'm as strong as my father I won't have mercy, so watch yourself." As he limped away. That's when I realized his father and him were the Nahuals. He also mentioned me killing his father, but in what way? The old man had died years ago, or so people said anyway. Ever since then I lived with caution, waiting for the day that bastard would decide to come back and settle the score. But when that time comes, I'll be more prepared than ever before, waiting for the chance to kill another one of those beasts. My cows have been growing a bit restless recently, but I always keep my grandfather's shotgun loaded just in case. Thanks for watching.